risk management is evolving in the digital marketplace, and in financial services, digital has introduced disruption, and along with it, new risks around this intermediation, around managing third parties, around a new way, agile development methods that introduce new risks. And so all of this present risks that need to be managed holistically and across the entire organization. And it's not just a business function, but really across the entire organization. And this is really about getting the right risk governance in place, the right oversight, and the right stakeholders involved in managing risk in digital. ASEAN, we're in a very interesting state of financial services development. There's plenty of growth opportunities, as demonstrated by the recent US-ASEAN meeting. A lot of interest in the region, a lot of growth opportunities. But equally, there's plenty of challenges around regulatory regimes that are quite different, because obviously we operate in a very non-homogeneous financial system across ASEAN. The financial institutions in general are looking up to these opportunities and looking at how digital can help them get into markets where it's not so feasible or costly even to have a physical presence. Fintech has disrupted the financial services industry. In ASEAN is no exception. All the banks realize the fintech threat is front and center. They realize they have to be part of the action or be classified as non-relevant. The challenge really is to figure out where they should play in the fintech space and how they should do that. And we've seen some very interesting developments in this space in terms of investments taken by financial institutions where they have either created their own capabilities in-house or set up accelerators or invested in certain up-and-coming fintechs with the hope that they could partake in this journey. But there's no one right answer. It really depends on where the financial institution is playing. I think the other aspect of fintech is it's clearly a disruptor. It compels the banks to change and relook at the operating models because there's a lot of this intermediation going on. And so the challenge for the banks is to figure out where should they really choose to focus in working with fintech or in fintech. Should it be in lending? Should it be in robo-advisors? Should it be looking at analytics and workforce automation and payments and crowdfunding? And you could see there's a very, very long list. And so being very, very focused and being very relevant to the customers that they choose to serve and the market is extremely important. As fintech becomes more and more part of our operating environment, all of the regulators in ASEAN, I should say, are very cognizant of the fact that they have to allow fintech to evolve, but at the same time play their roles as regulators and make sure that customer privacy is protected, that data is in a good place, and so on and so forth. And this is where in ASEAN, I think there's some very interesting challenges that banks and institutions have to face. There's almost a continuum in terms of how the regulators across ASEAN are dealing with fintech regulation. On one end of the spectrum, you have Singapore, where they are very, very progressive, very, very upfront in terms of working with fintech players, looking at what other regulators are doing around the world and identifying how they could create a smart financial system. And on the other hand, at the other end of the continuum, a number of the emerging market regulators are still either very passive or a little bit too ambiguous about how the regulations should be with regards to cloud computing, with regards to outsourcing and so on and so forth. The good thing is that all the regulators realize that there's a need to converge at some stage. And I'm personally hopeful that with the AEC, the ASEAN Economic Community, and the opportunity for regulators to get more connected and more integrated, there will be more standardization, there would be more regulations that would converge, that would allow financial institutions to more seamlessly operate across the region. Because frankly, if they don't do that, it would create a lot of problems and costs for institutions that operate cross-border business, be it wealth management, be it transaction banking, because all of these cut across different jurisdictions, and having to cater for different regulations across the region, it can be quite difficult. It's an interesting dilemma to get that right balance between innovation and compliance, because they're actually on both sides of the coin. And I think at the end of the day, FIs need to be cognizant of the fact, and I think many of the leading players are as well, focus on what the customers really want. And the customers want a high level of service. They want it to be personalized. The digital customers, especially in this day and age, want it to be intuitive. It has to be simple because they have very positive experiences, primarily outside of financial services. And so they would naturally want to have the same sort of experience within financial services. Unfortunately, or rather, the state of affairs in financial services is that it is a regulated environment. It's about risk management. It's about also making sure that the customers themselves, whilst they get this level of experience and products and service from the bank, they're protected. That consumer protection is there, the customer data is not lost, is not out in the open. And so you can see it's important to have this right balance between innovation. And I think one of the key enablement, if you like, is that if institutions themselves can bring all of their different parts, different stakeholders, legal, compliance, risk management, internal audit, all of these functions that traditionally have played more of a gatekeeper role, if they could move them more into a stakeholder, innovation stakeholder role, where they, together with the business, are trying to figure out and sort out this right balance between innovation and compliance and make it work for the customer. I think those are the players that would thrive in this new market environment that we're in.